issues. Just to finish up the question that we were answering before about having a U.S. citizen spouse, it can be a little bit more difficult to prove that you don't have immigrant intent if you do have a close first-degree relative in the U.S. You can demonstrate that you have what we call dual intent, which is that perhaps one day you would like to immigrate to the U.S., but that your purpose of travel today is for a temporary purpose. That being said, you might want to look into having your spouse file for you, and you can learn more about that at uscis.gov.
All right, next question. I heard I can work on a B1, B2 as long as it's not that much money. Is that true? So no, there are, you are not allowed to work on a B1, B2. You can look at the information on travel.state.gov on what is allowed on a B1, B2 tourist or visitor visa. There are some ability to conduct business, but being employed or earning a direct income from the United States is not one of the options on the B1, B2 visa.
Okay. I think we've answered our questions about 214B. It means that you haven't demonstrated to the consular officer that either your purpose of travel is not consistent with tourism or that you don't have the ties that would compel you to leave the U.S. after a short visit. If there are any other ineligibilities at the time, or if you have any other ineligibilities, the consular officer will tell you in writing and verbally at the time of your interview if any of those other ineligibilities apply to you.
Okay. I heard I can be penalized for having fake stamps or visas in my passport. Is that true? We do pay attention and we do look to the visas. We work with our partners in Nigeria to identify passports and, visas and stamps that might be fraudulent. And we oftentimes do work with authorities if we believe that there are larger issues. But you are most likely putting yourself in a position that you will not be eligible for a visa at that time, and you could be receive other ineligibilities or disqualifying yourself for future applications. It would make it very challenging to be able to overcome that first instance of saying that you did use fraudulent stamps or visas, and then coming back and using credible ones. We would question your credibility further.
I'd just like to add to that and say that a large part of the process is assessing whether or not what you're telling us is true and your credibility as an applicant. And using falsified documentation does speak a lot about your credibility. Arrested for having falsified documents in your passport. So please be very careful when you're submitting your application and when you're making statements to the consular officer about perhaps prior travel history and any other statements that you might say.
Good.
So my friend told me I needed to have an introduction letter from someone in the U.S., but the consular officer didn't even look at it when I interviewed. What happened? As my colleague previously said, we often don't look at documentation. We don't need to see an invitation letter to determine whether or not you qualify for the visa, because again, what we're looking at are your ties outside of the U.S., not necessarily the purpose of your travel in the U.S. is only one part of your application process. So that might be why the consular officer didn't look at your introduction letter.
Okay, a question from, I believe it's Guru. I have a question. What is the procedure for applying a visit visa for a domestic worker who wants to accompany his boss? Subtext is he has worked with him for over 10 years, who currently holds a visit visa and is going on a 2-week holiday. We do see this quite a bit, actually. It is allowed that a domestic worker follows their family or boss, whoever that they're going with. We do require that that person applies under, I believe it's a B1 visa. It's a very specific category. It's called B1. They will need to disclose, obviously, their intent on going with that individual. That individual should also have a visa. They would require showing their contract, and we do require that applicants their work contracts show that they are making at least minimum wage in the United States, which does change. So I do encourage you to look online for that. But I believe right now it's
it varies by
yes,
state.
It varies. So you will need to meet that minimum requirement. And then we do ask several questions related to intent on returning, your ties outside of the United States. So you still have to overcome Section 214B of our immigration law as well. Anything to add?
Just that all domestic workers in the all workers in the United States, regardless of their nationality, do have rights and privileges that need to be respected. So part of that is paying the minimum wage and abiding by other labor laws. But if you feel that you are not being treated fairly, there are resources available to you. And if your visa is issued, the consular officer will give you more information on what those rights are. Okay, so the next question is from Aziz. My wife spent 89 days in the US and it was hurricane period in Florida and she had a pregnancy, complications, and she delivered, but when she got back to Nigeria, her visa was revoked. Please, what is the solution? We cannot comment on individual cases in this forum. I will say that we do, as part of our application or our adjudication process, we do look at what people say they are going to do in the United States and then what they ultimately do. So if, for example, I'm not saying that this is what happened, if you say you will stay 2 weeks in the United States and you actually spend 3 months, it does raise questions about why your plans changed so dramatically and or so quickly. So that is something that we do ask about. And we do also ask that people pay their medical bills if they do receive treatment in the United States. So please make sure that you are paying all of your bills appropriately.
All right, the next question is from Azu. It says, can one get a non-immigrant visa for 5 years just so we don't keep coming back for it? Actually, this is based on our reciprocity policies with Nigeria. Nigeria issues American citizens 2-year visas, so we also issue 2-year visas to Nigerians, and that's why it varies from country to country. If you know other countries that might get longer or even shorter visa periods. So it's based on the policies between the two countries, the relationship between the two countries.
Okay. The next question is from Iwoha. Who qualifies for a Dropbox visa renewal? If you are applying for the same category of visa as your previous visa and you are applying in the same country and your visa has been expired for less than 1 year, you're eligible for a renewal, for a Dropbox. So B1, B2s, F1s, and M1s, I believe. I'm not sure that there are any other categories that are eligible.
J1, correct. I believe J1 as well.
And you can always go to our website, ng.usembassy.gov, for more information.
Okay, the next question is from Hara. Can I apply for a visit visa to visit my wife in the U.S. while the alien relative petition is still in process? I know you guys just, well, we can ignore skip the opinion part of it. So it's a great question. I think this goes along with what my colleague was saying earlier. You can have dual intent. You need to show your ties to Nigeria or to outside of the United States and your intent to return and to wait for the immigrant visa process to continue. It is more challenging to be able to prove to the consular officer that you have the intent on returning and not immigrating to the U.S. in that moment, considering that you already have a pending immigrant visa application. But it is possible, and it would require you to, the burden would be on you to show the ability to do that.
So the next question is from Sahid. What are the requirements for a student visa? So you have to have been accepted to a U.S. college or university. You have to have an approved I-20, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you can pay for the entire first year of the program.
Okay, so a follow-on question to that. The consulate only issues student visas to big name schools. We're not evaluating the schools when you come in for an interview. We are evaluating you as a student We will ask you why you chose that school and how that school fits your academic purpose, and evaluating you based on the requirements that we were just speaking about. So it is not specifically about the schools. We do have a number of students who go to much smaller schools or community colleges as well, who come in for applications.
The next question is from Baba J. Please, what is administrative procedure? I think you mean administrative processing. And that just means that there is a little bit more work that we need to do on your case. Sometimes if we interview you in the window and we tell you, there's something else that I have to look at, I don't have the time right now. It just means that your case is in administrative processing it, and we will get to your case as soon as we finish interviewing everybody in line. Or if you were asked to come back for an interview, if you tried to apply through Dropbox, then it means that we will be in touch with you shortly about what we need from you to continue processing your application, whether that's another in-person appearance or bank statements or something else.
All right. Next question. So I want to go to New York for a 2-week visit, and I don't really know anyone or know what I want to see there, or have any of that information. Will it affect my interview? So we do evaluate, along with ties, your intent and your purpose of travel. I would say that it is important to at least have some indication of your itinerary, how long you plan on staying, what you might see or do, or why you chose New York over somewhere else, and just your at least tentative plans, so that we can be able to evaluate your intent and whether or not you would qualify based on the information that we have. Without information, we really cannot make a decision, or it would be more difficult for us to approve a visa.
Okay, so again, Olusegun, please, what are the documents, aside from the ones listed on your website, required for a B1, B2 visa? Is bank statement truly required? This is confusing, and the main thing agents are using to take advantage of people. We do not require bank statements, period, end of story. We very rarely ask to see documents of any kind. If the consular officer truly wants to see your bank statements, they can put you in administrative processing, which we just talked about, to give you time to provide the required documents. You should not feel that you have to provide any one document in particular when you're coming for your B1, B2 interview.
All right, I believe the name is Malala. Why a foreign resident eligible for Dropbox after she has done Dropbox will be asked to schedule an interview? I'm not sure I understand the question. If you're applying initially from a different country, say if you applied and you were living in Kenya and you received your visa in Kenya and now you're in Nigeria and you're applying in Nigeria, we would need to bring you in, as we've not interviewed you before in Nigeria. I'm not sure if that's exactly the question that's being asked, if you have a different...
The only other question I might think is if perhaps somebody who is not Nigerian but living in Nigeria, who generally applies in Nigeria, tries to apply through Dropbox. If you get called back for an interview, it would be for the same reasons that we call anybody back for an interview. Perhaps we need to retake your fingerprints. Perhaps we want to ask you some questions about your latest travel, or some other questions. So my elderly mother needs medical treatment in the United States and I want to accompany her. Can I also apply for a visa to go with her? Jeff, answer that one.
Sure. So as we said before, I'm assuming that the elderly mother has not yet herself gotten a visa in this circumstance or in this scenario. If you come in with your elderly mother, you do qualify on your own as well, on your own merits. So we'll interview you separately, in addition to needing to review the information that you provide about the medical treatment and the plan for making payments for the medical treatment in the United States. So if you plan on going with your elderly mother and she is approved and you're planning on staying for 3 months, for example, we might ask you, how are you managing that with your current employer, or other such questions. But you, in individually would qualify separately from your elderly mother, and we do split our decisions in terms of that. We can issue one and decide not to issue the other.
Akeem, did you issue a holiday visa to first-time travelers? We do issue B1, B2 visas to people who have not traveled outside of Nigeria. Prior travel is only one aspect of your application that we look at, and we look at your application as a whole. And so we will also be looking at your profession, your family ties, and whatever else you can tell us about that might encourage you to leave the U.S. after a temporary visit and come back to Nigeria.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was recently approved an immigrant visa from my U.S. citizen husband and want to bring our daughter with me to the United States. I heard I can just apply for a non-immigrant visa for her, and we can do all the paperwork when we go to the United States. This is a forum for non-immigrant visa questions. This is sort of a non-immigrant visa question still. I believe that the answer is no, that they cannot travel on a non-immigrant visa with immigrant visa intent. Especially, it would make it especially challenging to be able to prove non-immigrant intent when you plan on adjusting or going to the U.S. and filing for immigrant status for your child at that point.
Okay, from Daniela, hello, thank you for your time. Is there an email address to send a question to in regards to the subject matter, which is a confidential question? You can send all of your questions to lagosniv@state.gov with the specifics of your case, and somebody will get back to you, and I believe it's 2 to 3 working days. Or you can always call us, and our phone number is listed on our website.
All right. Okay, so I've heard this before as well, but I have been denied 6 times. I've always told the truth. I own a home, I have kids and a good job, and yet you still say no every time. Sometimes we, you can provide all the information that we're asking for, and it's based on, as my colleague was just saying, the totality of your application. Sometimes you might not be articulating well your intent on what you plan on doing in the United States, and clearly demonstrating why or how you would be inclined to leave the United States after your tourism or after your trip. And being able to articulate that well during the interview is very important. Did you have anything to add to that?
I would just say that we all apply the same law around the world. Every single one of us uses the same laws. And so if one of my colleagues finds you ineligible under a visa, chances are very, very high that I will also find you ineligible for the same reasons, unless something has significantly changed. So the letters that we give out say that we are assessing your ties, social, professional, economic, whatever. And if nothing has changed, you will likely get the same response. That's true in Nigeria. It's true all around the world. So if nothing has changed, you might want to wait until something has changed significantly before reapplying.
Mm-hmm. It's from Goodley. Why is it that you don't want to see applications' genuine documents and your interviews last less than 30 seconds? So at least to address the first portion of that, we are able to do a lot of our interviews, and based on the information that you provide, being able to articulate well, as we were saying, who you're going to visit, how you know them, the information that you provide is more important than the document that you have in front of you. We do see a lot of people come in with documents and want us to read them, but our ability to interview you face to face, and we're unique in that sense that not all countries will interview you for a visa, and we value the person-to-person experience to be able to hear what you plan on doing and your ties, and coming directly from you rather than from a piece of paper.
And to echo my colleague, there's a lot of information in the DS-160 that you submit, and we're also looking at that as we interview you. There's information on your job, your salary, where you live, your family, your travel history, and so we don't necessarily need to ask you questions that have already been answered for you. Okay, so the next question is from Donald. Hello, can I get an emergency scheduling if the graduate studies is to resume in January 2019? You are welcome to request an emergency appointment. You would have to schedule a regular appointment first, and then there is an option in our appointment website online where you can request an emergency interview or an expedited interview. If that request is approved, then you will be told how to go about scheduling that interview.
Okay, I believe this is Lecky. It says, is there an age restriction to the applications who want to study a certain skill set? I'm assuming this also has to do with the student visa application, and the answer to that is no. We have students who go from a very young age to much more senior in life, and they go and do their second or third degrees or change their course of study. So there is no age restriction to studying in the United States.
Okay. Good. This is from Papaula Taiwo. Good afternoon. What are requirements the U.S. expects from their applicants? How many times do I appear for interview before the visa is given? The only thing that we require is that you can demonstrate that the purpose of your travel is consistent with the visa category, and that you will leave the United States after a certain period of time. If you cannot demonstrate that, then we are legally prohibited from granting a visa. Some people qualify on their first visit. Some people qualify after a few interviews over several years because their circumstances have changed and they finally have the ties that we're looking for that they didn't previously have. We're not asking for people to apply 3 times in 1 year or twice in 2 months. There's no set number of times that we're asking you to interview. And as I said previously, if nothing has changed in your life, you will probably keep getting the same answer. So it's important to think about why you want to go to the U.S. and what your circumstances are before you reapply.
Okay, this is from Nawadu Sunday. Hello, how do you appeal a visa revocation?
Yeah, so simply put, you cannot appeal it. If you would like to travel to the United States again, you will have to reapply for a visa the same way everybody else does. I would advise you to keep in mind that if your visa was revoked, you would have to demonstrate a fairly compelling reason why your circumstances have changed or why the reasons that your visa was revoked no longer apply to you.
Okay, I can take the next one. From Oladepo, it says, do you view people's DS-160 before the interview date? We actually do not. When you come in, we scan your barcode. That barcode will help us pull up your application and your DS-160. So all of the information that you provide is in front of us during the interview, and that's the time that we're taking while you're answering questions. We ask you questions based on the information that we see in front of us. We do not review them ahead of time, no.
And this is from Malal. How long are visa fees valid for someone that has gone for Dropbox and was asked to schedule for an interview because getting an appointment is very difficult? If you have already paid for your appointment, you will be able to use that barcode when we ask you to come back in for your interview. You do not have to pay twice if we put you in administrative processing to come in for another interview.
Next question. I've been told I must pay a fee to the guards in the parking lot for my visa. If my visa is approved, how much do I have to pay? Again, this is the answer is no. You do not have to pay anything. The guards or anyone else should not be asking you to pay a fee upon entry or exit. All of the fees are conducted through the consulate or the embassy itself. And it's associated with the DS-160 and the application that you are applying for. So if anyone else who is either providing you with documentations or helping you fill out your application or a guard that's outside is asking you for money, I would recommend not to pay them because that is not a requirement. Additionally, I would ask if it's a guard working for the U.S. Embassy or the consulate that you contact us and let us know that information and let us know that that happened to you so that we can look into the case further.
And our website for reporting that is fraud@ustraveldocs.com. Okay, so the question from Victor is after getting an admission letter from a school of your choice for a master's, what are the chances of getting the visa, and is it possible to apply in a different country? We don't talk about chances or probabilities of getting the visa. You need to demonstrate to the consular officer that you are a genuine student and that you have the ability to finance your proposed plan of study. It is possible to apply in a different country. If you generally live there, that would be fine. However, if you find yourself on vacation in France, for example, and you want to apply for your student visa from there, it will be more difficult for them to assess your ties because they won't be as familiar with Nigeria, and they won't know, they won't just be as familiar with the circumstances here as we are. And so they would probably advise you to apply in Nigeria or your country of usual residence.
Okay, this is from, I believe it's Felida. It says, as a U.S. citizen, what visa category do I need to apply under in order to bring my adopted son to the United States? This is, again, a non-immigrant visa forum. We do have support for immigrant visa questions at, is it Lagos IV at state.gov that you can email. Again, it's Lagos IV immigrant visa at state.gov. And to answer your questions, and there's also information on travel.state.gov about your immigrant visa process. That would be an immigrant visa question and not a non-immigrant visa.
Okay, and the next question is, I have so many friends with good connections to Nigeria who have been refused US visas. Why is this? Again, we cannot comment on any one individual's circumstances here. But as we said before, we assess people's intent as well as their ties. And there are many ways of demonstrating those ties. Some of them could be home ownership, or your professional history, or your travel history, or your family. So your friends may have been refused because they couldn't demonstrate to the consular officer that their ties were sufficient. They may also have been refused because they couldn't demonstrate that the purpose of their travel would be consistent with what they said that they would be doing.
I also, Jane mentioned that we are moving too fast. We might be talking a bit fast, so apologies for that if you didn't catch something. A lot of the information you can find as well online on the websites that we've indicated, but we're happy to answer more questions. I can take the next one as well then, but Tunde asks, is it possible to get a visit visa with my wife and kids, even we don't have travel history at all? We are planning on visiting the U.S. by early next year. Thanks. So I think we've answered this question several times. It is based on your ability as an applicant to demonstrate your ties and your purpose of travel. So what you have that will allow us to see that you will leave the United States after your duration of travel, and why are you traveling to the United States, are really some of the main things that we are looking for. And if you've not traveled before, we have issued visas to qualified applicants who have never traveled before, and that is possible. But we do ask about your prior travel as well.
All right, so I believe that's all the time we have for today. But we want to thank you all for your time and for your thoughtful questions. If you have any other questions that we haven't answered, you can probably find the answers at .gov, or you can email us at lagosniv@state.gov.
Thank you.